Welcome back to our broadcast. This is round 14 of the Blitz here in Leuven, and we shall see the players already sitting at their boards, ready to start this big battle where we will focus on the game between.
We're gonna go with the Americans, Hikaru Nakamura versus Wesley. So Hikaru Nakamura still has not reached the 50% mark overall. In Blitz today he has 2 out of 4, he has +1 in the Blitz, but hasn't recovered from a very bad for his standards rapid event. While Wesley So has been doing well, is still very much in contention for the second place, but with black against Hikaru Nakamura, of course he will have his work cut out for him in order to maintain his half-point lead over Vish. He's 1 point ahead of Vichy and half a point ahead of Levon Aronian. There we see Hikaru Nakamura, no problems waking up thanks to his enormous Red Bull intakes. He drinks 1 can per round, so that's normally 9 per day. Therefore he should be well caffeinated. Handshake with Wesley So there. We don't know what substances Wesley is taking, but so far he's had no problem staying fresh either. Nakamura does not want a theoretical debate, goes 3e3, trying to throw Wesley out of book. Wesley is shown to be very well prepared and does not play the, in my opinion, most challenging move c5, but goes with the symmetrical e6, when after c4 we get back to a theoretical position where c5 is one of the many options.
Copying all the moves of Hikaru, this is a mirror position. Now c takes d4 would be just bad, so it's time to stop copying the opponent. Knight takes d5 is on the board.
Yeah, they used to play ed here, but white just goes bishop b5 check, exchanges the bishops, when after d takes c5 he enjoys a tiny positional advantage, and Wesley So is not the type to take risks and plays the move knight takes d5 therefore, which is a lot more solid, not compromising his pawn structure. I believe we've transposed, oh no, we haven't fully transposed, but the position has transformed into something very different here. Endgame with arguably tiny lead in development for white. Queen takes d4, knight takes d4, a6, stopping knight db5, but allowing e5, grabbing more space, which I'm not sure if Hikaru's going to do it or if he's going to start with bishop to f4, a move of that nature. No, he goes f3, wants to maintain the structure, just go bishop e3 and develop. Typical black play would be Wesley starts with bishop c5. I was going to say bishop d7 followed by knight c6, a plan we've seen in many circumstances here. Bishop c5, bishop e3 is on the board, and knight c6 directly. If knight takes e6, he wants bishop takes e3, which would be fine for black. Therefore, looks like Wesley has equalized here. Can't see a better move than long castles or rook d1, but neither of those look particularly challenging. You just exchange a bunch of pieces on d4 if there's nothing better.
If castle, can he go e5 to try to do something about that pin, or there's no such? He played knight c2, he doesn't want to stay in the pin. Yeah,
castle e5, knight c2 was possible as well, but Hikaru decided to break it immediately. However, now he's stuck with his bishop, which is slightly passive, so just bishop takes e3, knight takes, and any move really, bishop d7 does look to equalize quite comfortably. Wesley started with king e7.
c1 on the board, and rook d8 by Wesley So. Knight a4, heading to those dark squares that have been weakened by a6.
Yeah, it's the only trump white has, to put a knight on b6 or on c5, but it feels like it's very limited impact. Hikaru goes knight b6, rook to b8, and Wesley can start working on extinguishing that knight by going bishop e8, followed by knight d7. It feels like black should equalize, but he would have been even happier had his pawn still be on a7, so he doesn't have to deal with this. Not quite sure what Hikaru should do. Probably just finish development. I don't know, bishop e2 or somewhere. He's thinking here, maybe he's considering some tactics, but I have a feeling he's not well enough developed for stuff like this.
Bishop takes a6, but the b2 pawn will drop as well, and rook b1 is a threat. Even if there's knight d1, you don't really want to go into that pin, I believe.
No, taking on d7 looks like a little too much. Yeah, he's played bishop e2, developing. Wesley follows
bishop e8,
with his plan.
Preparing knight d7, king f2. It's okay not to castle here because this is approaching an endgame where you will need your king active.
Yeah, Wesley taking a bit of a timeout here. Knight d7 is the most obvious move. You could also contemplate either knight e5 or knight d4, but then you have to be very sure that rook c7 doesn't hurt you. Curious what he's going to come up with, but I'd go knight d7. Can't really see any immediate problems. Probably Hikaru would try to maintain one knight on b6, go knight c4. Yeah, there we go, knight d7.
Knight d7, Wesley is listening to you. And I believe, no, he takes. I thought knight c4 would also appear on the board. It's knight takes, rook takes.
Rook to c3. Problem for white is, even though his position looks a little more active long term, this black knight has the d4 square. That's why Wesley recapture with the rook to cover the c7 square, so he can jump. He can also double rooks and play something like f6. The only trick not to blunder is bishop takes a6, but he's calculated that.
Rook b d8, so in case a bishop takes, he goes rook d2 check, grabbing the b2 pawn. Yeah, in the position where the pawn disappears. And that's a rook downs. We can see blunders like this in Blitz, but I believe Hikaru Nakamura spots this idea.
Yeah, still Hikaru won't be pleased with the situation. Very limited winning chances. He has to be a little careful, actually, in my opinion, because long term, if black manages to stabilize, black will have the better knight against the worse bishop. So Hikaru has to find some active measures against that, if they exist.
d4.
Wesley jumps into d4 immediately, threatening knight takes e2, followed by rook d2 check. And I guess he should go rook d1, trying to neutralize this pressure along the d file. When after knight takes e2, you can exchange a pair of rooks. Say takes, check, king e1, and the position should be fairly balanced. Hikaru seems to have other ideas though. Yeah, he wants to keep this bishop. He goes bishop to c4.
Knight
Wesley just
c6.
retreats, not overly ambitious.
Offering a repetition of moves, although I don't think that the players want to go back to the previous position with bishop e2. That doesn't make much sense.
I'm not sure. It's very hard for white to get anything more than equality here. So
He repeats move. There it goes. A hidden draw offer
now he's going for rook d1. which I
declined by
mentioned
Hikaru
earlier.
Nakamura with rook d1.
And Wesley just plays f6. Also very logical, trying to reactivate this bishop. Bishop f1, bishop f7. Yeah, white has nothing. Hikaru, of course, is trying to keep the game going. As I mentioned, if anybody is better, it's black. So Hikaru has to be careful not to overextend here. Because, yeah, that's what Wesley's been doing. He's playing solid. He's extremely well prepared in the opening. He's a good tactician. And if someone pushes too hard against him, he's happy to cash in without taking any risks. He normally does not mind a draw. And it's worked out for him well in this tournament. Rook dc1, but that's nothing to gain on the c-file. Hikaru is just trying to maintain the position, maybe waiting for e5 to activate his
b5
bishop.
and
with
h4.
e5, not sure what that's for. It doesn't spoil anything, controlling the c4 square.
And
h4
then
is logical.
e5 to lots of pawn pushes, changing the position.
Yeah. Status quo is the same though. Black has a slightly better knight. White has to find some work for his bishop g3. He would go bishop e6, stopping bishop h3. It shouldn't be big trouble for Hikaru. Yeah, g3, bishop e6 on the board. But it's a little more pleasant to be black here. You can try to make something happen on the queen side with a5 and b4. Or sometimes even open the king side with g5. We'll see how it goes.
Rook c7, knight b3, and rook from c1 to c6.
Yeah, Wesley's just gonna take and play rook d7, probably still rook c6. And then
And if
his
rook
idea of
d6?
rook a7 or rook d6 is also solid, yeah.
He goes back to c2. Hikaru play rook c2, keeping the rook on the board. Is that knight a1? He has just
Yeah,
played?
Wesley keeps inviting move repetitions, even though he's not worse, so I would expect
Seems like
him
he's
to
very good
go more
at
ambitious.
drawing, fighting for the draw. We joked yesterday that he's the new Anish Giri, but we can't really say it because he's actually on second place and he is doing a very a good tournament, drawing or winning normally.
Rook c6, rook d2 check. That was his idea, to force the rook off the second rank. King to e1. I'm expecting, yeah, rook takes b2, rook takes a6. It's still Hikaru fighting for the draw here. If the knight now returns to d4, it's going to have a lot bigger impact. And yeah, nice maneuvering there by Wesley. So also maybe using the fact that Hikaru refuses to repeat moves. Knight d5 check, trying to gain some counterplay. Bishop d5, ed, knight d4. At least he has this d-pass pawn. It still looks like black is in the driver's seat here. d6 check. I don't know where you go though. So I was gonna say king d7, but then bishop h3 bothered me a little. Maybe it's possible to play like this, just f5, g6 if needed, and it looks like it's very hard for white to make progress. Well, sooner or later black will cash in here. No, Nakamura's in trouble as far as I can tell.
Can he go to d8 in the position you mentioned? Well, anyway, they played in different ways, so let's see what happened. Bishop d3, knight takes f3, checking f1, knight h2.
Come on, Wesley. No draw this time. Stop
He is repeating, but now he should try to play for a win probably, although the d pawn is very strong and might compensate for all that happened. This pawn down for
There's
white.
e4.
Yeah.
e4, this bishop takes e4.
And at the end, rook e6 wins back the piece.
Even this looks very, very good for black.
Yes, with the king cut on the second rank and now rook b3 grabbing a pawn, could be. He played g6
Played g6,
though.
which is also a good move, stopping the bishop from going to f5. Hikaru plays h5, but now f5 looks possible, even giving up this g6 pawn after hg, rook g6. Black will just go e4, and yeah, Wesley So's played f5. This looks like it should, I think it should win.
This looks very bad for Hikaru Nakamura, who is not finding his shape here in Leuven. He was the winner of Paris Grand Chess Tour just a week ago, and we expected him to do very well here in Belgium.
It was rook b6, but yeah, you can see he's unhappy with his choices and therefore had to settle for a different move. Might be a good move though, because after e4 he can go d6 check and king d7 all of a sudden would run to bishop takes b5 check, which would be bad news. Therefore, Wesley, yeah, he decides to repeat once and
Just to gain some time on the clock, although it's only 2 seconds, but it's something.
he's trying to calculate things. Knight d4 is possible, but that's not what you want, to remove that knight from its lovely f3 square. We'll see what he can come up with. It's not obvious to me, at least. He goes e4, allowing d6 check. Probably he just wants to go king f6.
d6 is on the board, as you said, and let's see if king f6 is his plan.
It's not easy to find a square. King d7 is no good, and king e6 has a... he goes king e6, but bishop takes b5.
He's threatening
now there is
bishop
a threat of
c4.
bishop c4, which bothered me. Maybe Wesley's calculated everything. Some line like king e5, d7, e3.
Bishop c4 immediately. Instead of taking the pawn, he gave a check.
Is that one?
But king e5, and what's the point? d7? Knight h2? Ah, he wants to repeat now. Or there's
Not
something
sure.
more. I think he wants to repeat. Yeah, draw. Because if he goes to d1, then after rook d2, the pawn will be taken. This is a draw between the two Americans.
He could have tried e3, threatening rook f2, checkmate, but it would have backfired after rook e6 check, king d4, and the pawn queens would check.
We shall see what's happening between Carlsen and Kramnik. It seems that Magnus Carlsen is about to win yet another game.
Yeah, it's a rook endgame, but 2 pawns down is too much, even for Vladimir Kramnik and his famous rook endgame technique. Or is it? This rook on h4 is very passive. It won't be so easy for Carlsen to come up with a winning plan, freeing his rook. Position might be a draw, actually.
Do you think so?
Yes.
He will have to give up a pawn to activate the rook. Trying to get close with the king, but there are always checks.
Carlsen down to 4
5-4.
seconds, offers a draw.
Yeah. a draw, but it's still a big lead for Magnus Carlsen, who will now have 21 points. And Wesley So only drew as well, so basically Magnus Carlsen is almost the winner of the tournament, even if he loses almost all his games.
Yeah, Vishy Anand keeps going strong, defeated MVL. We're going to have a look at that in a second. Veselin Topalov lost to Fabiano Caruana. Could not make his comeback last for longer than one game. Well, Fabiano has a respectable score in the Blitz, but after his mediocre performance on the first days, it won't be enough. 2 draws in the other games, as we've seen. Well, we haven't seen Anish's game, but it was a draw. Let's see what happened between Vishy and MVL. Good old Najdorf, MVL's main weapon. Theoretical debate here, we've seen similar positions many a time, including in their classical game during the London Chess Classic, where they had something very similar, which, no, it's not true, that was Anand Topalov, sorry.
But they reached a position that doesn't seem to be very dangerous. At the same time, if this b5 pawn drops, then it's really problematic and it's not so easy to hang on to that pawn.
Yeah, something's gone wrong for black here. He's a pawn down, and Vishy's endgame technique is up to the task, and we'll try to create counterplay, but it was too little, too late.
Even with the opposite colored bishops on the board, this position, as we said, if you get the b5 pawn as well, this should be winning. You have 2 passed pawns.
Yeah, the problem was king c2 followed by b4 was a threat fixing this pawn, which then can later be captured. And if you avoid that by going somewhere, then white goes king b4. So there was nothing to do. MVL tried a desperate last attempt of giving up all his pawns, but here he realized that 3 enemy pawns are too many and decided to call it a game.
Nice win for Vishy Anand, who is now on 17.5, shared 3rd place with Levon Aronyan and Wesley So on 18 points. So the 2nd place is still out there, open to this. I think it will be between these 3 players.
It will be indeed, and the players are getting their customary lunch break. Is it now or is it after the next round? It's now, right?
It's now the lunch break, so we will be back with the next round at 3 o'clock Central European time. That is in 44 minutes.